abandoned ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and our next review for The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 4, Faster, which brought us back to nostalgic themes of The Phantom Menace. And this week we have our co-host Blake and Bryce joining us today in the podcast and digging up all this stuff in relation to The Bad Batch, as well as looking over an article from thedirect.com, and it's called Star Wars, all 18 fired and replaced directors in the Disney era. So we're going to take a look back and a look forward at relevant Star Wars change-ups creatively as time's gone by. Let's get into it.
Another happy landing.
All right, welcome back to the show, Mr. Blake.
Hey, always good to be back. Another exciting Bad Batch episode to talk about. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, always good time. And this week we also got our friend Bryce joining us on the show. Welcome back, Bryce.
Evening, fellas.
Evening.
How are you guys?
Oh, pretty good. Yeah.
Doing all right. Excited to chat some Star Wars.
Weekly unloading of all things Star Wars. That is, you know.
Not always unloading, thankfully.
Yeah. So this past week, well, I should say a week ago, as of tomorrow, we had episode 4 Faster come out with the Bad Batch, and this was a bit of a more condensed, smaller, kind of simple plot line. So this isn't going to take up a whole lot of time. But I figured, you know, let's run through it. Let's talk about it. You know, as part of the Bad Batch Aftershow series, and then we'll kind of get into this this article, which I found fascinating. Just off the bat, though, talk initial impressions. You know, about the episode, about Faster.
I thought it was a lot of fun, and to be honest, I felt like what we got from this one episode with the racing was more what I was expecting for the entire series of Star Wars Resistance to be.
Right.
And we didn't get that at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
Does it have a similar vibe?
It does.
Resistance?
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. It's Resistance went off on a weird tangent though, and really fast. That was the biggest issue for me. Like I was excited for a racing show, and then we didn't get very much racing.
Yeah, because I thought it was going to be like kind of something along the lines of the Hot Wheels show for.
That's what I thought
kids,
too.
right? But just Star Wars.
It's even like artistically designed to look like that with the cell shading.
Right.
But instead, it was, I think there was a race in the first episode. And then after that, it was all about like spy stuff and trying to figure out what the First Order was doing and some like mechanic work. No racing.
Yeah. You know, it was a short-lived show too. It was only 2 seasons, 40 episodes. For those who haven't seen it, aired between October 2018 and January 26, 2020. On Disney Channel and Disney XD. So kind of like the same age group that Resistance was made for, but then maybe take off a year or two, because it was definitely a bit more on the younger side, you know, like audience wise, I think. Sequel era takes place between episodes 7 and 8.
Is there any big like plot points that happens in the show that kind of like falls in with the timeline?
You know, honestly, nothing super essential.
Does anything important happen in the
show? Nothing incredibly essential. I mean, it
was more filling plot holes, I think, like explaining how the First Order made all their money. Turns out it was from gambling.
Right.
Yeah.
They basically just ran a casino.
That's right,
funded
kids.
the
Disney
entire First
XD.
Order.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wait, are the kids the racers as well? So it's not only gambling, but gambling on children. That is evil. That is very
Really hedging their bets.
Yeah.
They kind of explained a bit more of the politics or the relationship between the New Republic and the Resistance, whereas like the movies don't make it that clear, but the show kind of cleared a little bit up. But other than that, really didn't do much. I don't really count it in the, if I think of all the Star Wars animated shows, I don't really consider this part of the Dave Filoni group of shows, you know, like
Filoniverse? Is that
the Filoniverse. Yeah, like Tales of the Jedi, Rebels, Clone Wars, you know, like those shows all kind of like stick with me. Bad Batch, you know, they also kind of stick with me as relevant to the Filoniverse and like relevant to the future of live action Star Wars shows. But this one was a really kind of just random one-off thing for young kids.
In regards to the episode, I thought that honestly, I think it would make a very good like Mario Kart-esque Star Wars game.
That's true.
You know, kind of like Super Bombad Racing for the N64. Like it screamed like kids game to me. It's like, you have like power ups where you can like shoot each other, and there's like shields and like stuff like that they're like activating throughout the race.
No, that's a good point. It is pretty fun. That comparison. It is just Mario Kart.
Really yeah, it's like a I don't know. Like pod racing is very more of like F1, you know, kind of, and this one's much more of like an arcadey race.
Right. Yeah, you know what I thought of when I watched this race? Spy Kids 3.
Spy Kids 3.
Spy Kids 3. The death race. The death race with all the...
have any part in this?
The
original plan for the scooter chase was actually going to be this race. They just reused it.
Yeah, it was just the scooter race was just budget. It was super budget. Like, oh, yeah. No, Robert, you don't have enough money to do all the crazy stuff, you know? We can't afford to kill any more characters. There's only 4 of them.
And then they're racing, and then the tube is broken. They got to go on the roof.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, I feel you, Bryce. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I thought this episode was fantastic, and as simple and kind of straightforward as it was, there isn't a lot to talk about. But I just sat there enjoying it.
It's definitely a filler episode, right?
Yeah, it was a filler. It was a good filler though. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's a bit strange for an episode this early in the season. I feel like to be a filler episode.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I say it was for kids, but there is a guy in the crowd who just gets shot.
Yeah.
And like brutally dies, and everyone's just like, all right, we'll just keep watching like the race.
Yeah, I thought that
it was shot so well too. It was just like you see his blaster bolt shoot through the screen, and like everyone's like, oh, we're okay. And the camera pans back slightly, and the guy's like, oh, and like falls over.
It reminded me of that scene from Pirates. Isn't there a scene in Pirates of the Caribbean where that happens?
It's where a guy has a fork in his eye, right?
Well, someone gets shot. No, like someone gets shot in the chest or something, and then kind of just sits back down again, or whatever.
I mean, that's PG. What is this rated anyway?
I don't know. Actually, that's a good question. I mean, the same age group as Clone Wars, I believe, but yeah, PG-13 is Pirates of the Caribbean.
Because I mean, there's no blood.
So. No. Yeah, if there's no blood, they can technically have it on there, I guess. But I thought it was quite comical. And Disney Plus,
the humor was all right.
Yeah, the humor was great.
I do like Ben Schwartz. As
dude, Ben Schwartz as Teo was extremely funny. Just like he plays this funny, arrogant, comedic, great lines. Voice.
Oh man, so well done. I recognize his voice. I couldn't quite pin who it was, so I actually just looked him up before the show. Yeah, Ben Schwartz.
Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog. If anyone's seen the live action Sonic the Hedgehog movie, or I should say the CG film, it's the same guy that voices him in that movie. Such a great pick for.
I definitely know him as John Ralphio from Parks and Rec, and he's so funny.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
He's also from Bob's Burgers. I think is another big series he was in.
He plays like this droid that is kind of the opposite of a droid, right? The droid's like, I use my instincts, like calculations.
Yeah.
Chump.
You know
He says,
who,
no, you gotta trust your gut.
he reminded me a little bit about of L3 from Solo, just a little bit. I think it was like the arrogance that he has is kind of reminiscent of L3, but not quite the same. Yeah. I love when he's like half dead on the ground. He's like, I can still race. Just like stuff like that. Just like, it's like, man, it's so ridiculous that it reminds me of B1 Battle Droid humor or something like that.
Yeah.
It was pretty silly.
Where are my arms and legs?
Yeah. Yeah. He had some good gags. I really enjoyed him a lot. I would say he was, without a doubt, the standout character in this episode.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I would love to see him come back just for the antics.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe he just gets repurposed for something.
Yeah.
Should we go as far as saying he should join the crew? Should they get another pet?
I mean,
NPC pet.
I wouldn't
NPC.
I wouldn't mind seeing him all the time, if that's what it took. If he was just like that droid that they kind of like have on the ship and bring along on the missions and stuff, like I think I would like that. Because the Bad Batch, like as a group, they're other than Wrecker, they're not really funny.
No, they're all serious.
Yeah, like Tech is really serious. Like Hunter's really serious. Crosshair's really serious. Echo's really disturbed and serious. Like
no, it's true. There's no comedic relief.
no, yeah, like this droid, like Teo adds so much comedic value, and Wrecker is kind of like that dumb big guy who's just kind of like dummy funny
Slow.
Sort of thing. Yeah. Like but yeah, Teo is just like, I just lost it. There was a few times where he's just so funny. I was like, man, this guy, I really hope he comes back.
His antics, actually, going back to Resistance, did remind me a lot of I'm blanking on the guy's name, the alien guy.
Which guy was that?
I actually looked it up just before the show. And
Oh yeah,
anyway.
is it Miko or something, or Nico?
Yeah, that's it. Nico. Yeah, with the name Nico.
Yeah.
At first, I thought maybe it was the same voice actor, which obviously it wasn't, as we discussed here. But I think it must have been just the antics reminded me so much.
Yeah, you're talking about the Star Wars Resistance character. Is it Miko or Nico? I forget.
It is Nico with an N.
Is it Nico? Oh, Miko is the little, is the raccoon from Pocahontas, huh?
That's all Disney.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you get the point. It's all Disney. Yeah. So in this particular episode, Sid owes money to a guy named Malegi in the race that Teo loses, and this is kind of where the central of the plot is for this episode. And it really shows a new side of Sid that we haven't really seen or haven't been introduced to, because this Malegi guy, like at the end of the episode, kind of just says to Clone Force 99, he's like, hey, just watch your back. Like Sid's not to be trusted. Has she always been a good guy? Like, has she always been, more or less like an anti-hero protagonist sort of deal, or like maybe she's got a really shady background that we just don't know about? So like you said, Bryce, like,
he's just racist against Trandoshans. He's like, all Trandoshans are very evil.
Yeah, maybe, maybe she was one of the Trandoshans that was part of the hunting team, like that.
Yeah, she's a
everyone hates
background
her,
in Wookiee hunting.
Yeah.
I got vibes like they maybe had worked together in the past or something, and she like betrayed him or people he knows.
Yeah, I got that feeling too. I thought they'd known each other for a while. So it makes me wonder, like what Bryce was saying, like, maybe it's a filler episode, but then also maybe it could be just a foundation episode for like later on. We're gonna get a plot.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah.
Because now Sid owes them.
Yeah, now she owes them a favor for saving her skin, kind of thing. So, yeah. As far as the race goes, yep. Go ahead.
The alien guy that captures Sid or whoever, she loses the bet to him. I'm positive he's one of the alien races we see in Maz Kanata's castle.
Yes, he is. He's the big guy that works with the First Order, I believe, or the female spy that sits in his lap that then
Yeah,
calls the first order.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly the scene I'm thinking of.
Exactly. Yep. That is the same alien species. And his pilot is, I guess she, I wasn't paying attention. The name of that character is Venom. And that particular alien species was a pod racing species that we saw in the Phantom Menace. And I forget the name of the pod racer that we saw, but yeah, that was kind of neat to see. In fact, a lot of the pilots that we saw in this race were pretty cool. We saw a BX commando droid repurposed as a pilot. So that was pretty neat. 2
goofy protocol droids, one with a replaced head.
Yeah.
I don't know how those were
too.
Pardon?
I think there's a 3PO unit driving.
Yeah,
that's also the protocol droids.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine a world where that would be a good racer.
You're right though. Like this had resistance written all over it because everything from the design of the pilots, makeshift kind of building, whatever, similar to some of the pilots in Resistance. Some of them were wearing just repurposed Imperial armor or like whatever. And the actual ships, which were cobbled together from other ships, like we saw one in Resistance, which was like cobbled together like half TIE fighter, half something else. And, and then there was that one which they came up with from spare parts as well. A lot of these like speeders were also kind of like makeshift, like let's just make something that's deadly and fast and, as small as possible. Because they got to fit through those crazy tunnels. So it really had resistance written all over it. Music, sound design, I thought it was all great. The sound design was fantastic. Anyone working at Skywalker Sound should be proud. David W. Collins, fantastic job if you're listening to this podcast. But yeah, it was great. I thought the whole thing was fantastic. So, yeah, Teo, he's got a hilarious moment at the end where he gets run over and destroyed. And Tech has a very big Dominic Toretto moment in the crowd when they're all chanting his name and he wins the race. Yeah, don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
Extra's accurate for this episode too, because he did it to save Sid.
Yeah, that's right.
Family.
Yeah. All right, directors hired and fired. This is, we love Disney, we love Lucasfilm, but sometimes creative decisions play a part in the ins and outs of creative leads hired to helm a show. And in this case, the post-Lucas era of Star Wars is filled with people who are not George Lucas. But this list is an article from thedirect.com, and it sheds light on each Star Wars project that has had some change-ups here and there ever since 2013. 10 years ago as of this year, which is pretty nuts because 10 years has gone by since they announced a lot of details in regards to episode 7 and the creative team that was in charge of that, which is pretty crazy. So can you believe it's been 10 years? I mean, wow.
No.
Yeah. So the first up on the list is, of course, The Force Awakens, and the first name that is brought up is Michael Arndt. So on October 30th, 2012, Disney officially acquired Lucasfilm and announced a new slate of Star Wars movies, beginning with Episode 7. A group of creative minds was brought together to piece together the next chapter in Star Wars, including Toy Story 3, Michael Arndt. J.J. Abrams was brought on to direct, but he quickly found himself overseeing writing duties. Seeking 13 months to develop the story, Arndt was fired, and Abrams teamed up with the then consultant Lauren Kasdan to pen what became The Force Awakens. Lucasfilm vied for the release to be pushed back a year, but Disney and CEO Bob Iger, seeking an immediate return on investment, settled for December 2015. What do you guys remember about all that change up way back when, with Michael Arndt, getting tossed aside, who was penning a script based on George's outlines? This was the guy who was going to do it. And then JJ kind of came in and replaced it because, he was going to be directing and he wasn't really seeing that story as, I don't know if it was him or maybe like further up the chain, but, they decided to do something quote unquote, what George Lucas said in the Charlie Rose interview. Oh, for the fans. for the fans. So, what do you guys remember about this?
I don't remember this at all.
Really?
like Blake, did you hear about this? Am I just on the app?
I guess I was aware that Michael Arndt was working on it because when everyone was talking about Toy Story 3, and then it was like, oh, the Toy Story 3 guys working on Force Awakens, and then I remember, it's been so long. I vaguely remember this, but I really can't say any specific details.
All I remember is being really worried after he was kicked out of the group because I say that with speculating as to what happened, but I mean, when Michael Arndt was no longer part of Episode 7, which at the time The Force Awakens wasn't actually the given title for that movie, it was just Star Wars Episode 7, and it was a little worrying for me because this was the guy who took George's outlines, which is all that they had, and was penning a script. And it's like, well, what are you gonna do with like, this is the guy, right? Like, I mean, this is the guy. Obviously, like maybe George had a hand in picking him or something. These are George's outlines, and like it was very clear before The Force Awakens was announced as a title that they were moving away from what Lucas had kind of set up for the sequels. So this is kind of where all this whole sequel kind of drama begins is at the very start back in late 2012 and 2013 when this whole change up kind of happened, and I have no idea what Abrams had to do with it or whatever, but and everyone's got their opinion on Force Awakens, but yeah, I thought this was kind of a big one for me. I remember this very, very starkly.
Did Michael Arndt, did he have any like influence on like what eventually became of things, or like did anything he did kind of stick?
That honestly, like I have no idea. I know for sure that if anyone has a copy of the art of The Force Awakens, there are concept art based on those original scripts. A few of them have been semi-recycled in a way, variants made and then later used in some of the films. But the story was originally quite different and not the same as what we got. Definitely more of a direct sequel to Episode 6 rather than the movie we got, which felt a little more like a spin-off. So, Rogue One. Gary Whitta, longtime ILM supervisor John Knoll pitched the idea of Rogue One to Kathleen Kennedy as what was then considered an anthology film, based on an episode for the unproduced Star Wars Underworld series. Gary Whitta was hired to write the script, but later dismissed and replaced by Chris Weitz, sorry if I'm botching that last name, whose final drafts differed greatly from Whitta's. Gareth Edwards, when the film didn't come along as Lucasfilm expected, Gareth Edwards was fired deep in the post-production process. Though he retained his directing credit, Tony Gilroy was called in and assumed command of the editing process, oversaw significant emergency reshoots, and restructured much of the film's plot, collecting a screenwriting credit for his work. There's a lot of stuff on the internet about this already. I don't know about the Gary stuff, but I know the Gareth Edwards stuff was very much in the spotlight. And Tony Gilroy, who recently was, very intimately involved with Andor, was the guy who came in and helped with the reshoots. The rumor is that the whole Vader sequence and everything is pretty much credited to him, as well as the entire cut sequence in which the main characters have to run across the beach with the Death Star plans to the tower that they have to transmit from, rather than it all being in the same building. So if you watch back in those Rogue One trailers, there's a lot of footage that was cut from the end film because of the last minute reshoots and changes. So what do you guys remember about this one?
Pretty much what you just said. I don't think I even was aware of the writing changes though.
Yeah, what about you, Bryce?
I definitely remember like feeling. You know how as far as like trailers go, the trailer for Rogue One, I actually noticed like it was a lot different from, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of shots in the trailer that I was expecting to see in the movie, and it just didn't show up.
Yeah,
Like the TIE fighter. That's always the big one, right?
That's a huge one, right? Yeah.
right.
As far as the directors and writers and stuff, I guess I'm a bit on the outs when it comes to this stuff because I don't follow it.
I know if you're following the rumor mill back in the day, it was kind of all over the place.
Right.
Like as we're going through the list here, it's feeling like every project has had some pretty massive changes. So
Yeah.
I don't know if people have just become numb to it. I don't really notice anymore either.
Yeah, I mean, like, here's the thing too: is like this happens a lot on just about any project. I would imagine, like, it's Hollywood, it's movies, it's big companies with a lot of money, like, trying to find their story, and it happens, right? But I think what surprises me is that the Star Wars stuff has always been very much in the spotlight. Like, there's a lot of people that just kind of like notice when it comes to the Star Wars, like, reshoots or rewrites or director change-ups or whatever. Like the fan community kind of just notices and just goes on the record, right? So
I'm curious, like reshoots, all that stuff is pretty standard as far as I'm aware. But directors being swapped out, like, does that ever happen in Marvel films? We just don't really hear about it.
yeah, it does. Yeah, and sometimes it is, heard about or whatever, but yeah, not all the time. And I don't know, I feel like every single Disney Star Wars movie that's happened or show has had some kind of last minute adjustment somewhere, which causes a lot of like production chaos, right? So yeah, Rogue One was one of those ones that was very much in the spotlight, similar to Force Awakens, in a way.
I bet if you ask some of these guys like Gary Whitta or like Michael Arndt, I bet you they'd be like, you know what, it was a bit of a blessing in disguise. Like, like maybe they're like a bit happy that they didn't, go through it all the way.
Right.
So much pressure, and a lot of them don't turn out.
Our next one is Solo. All right, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. One of the projects initially conceived by George Lucas, Solo was Star Wars' first true box office disaster. Co-written by Lawrence and John Kasdan, the picture was initially helmed by directing duo Phil Lord and Chris Miller, aka Spider-Verse. Displeased with the level of improvisation, comedic approach, and length of time spent on set, the pair were sacked midway through production by Kennedy. Ron Howard picked up the mantle quickly and completed the production on time with reshoots, but the budget for the film was ultimately doubled. The movie was released May 2018 at the urging of Disney, and for a multitude of factors, flopped, largely eliminating the possibility of sequels, though Howard is game to return if fan support is strong enough. And as of late this past year, they actually did confirm that Solo 2 was not on the table. So, yeah,
That's actually disappointing.
it is. Yeah. So, yeah, what do you guys remember about this one?
I definitely remember this one. This was big news.
Yeah,
This was a big deal, yeah.
I think it was the first time that this level of chaos actually happened. Doubling a budget is not good.
And after Rogue One and The Force Awakens, you could really feel like the pressure that everyone on this show is under to like succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could also, there's starting to be a trend of this behind the scenes chaos happening. And I know when the news came out that they're bringing in Ron Howard, people were, quite concerned. And I feel like this film had a bit of a lack of mojo from the beginning. Most people's response was, why are they making this?
Right.
So it's one of those, I don't know if maybe it was people talking online that doomed it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like people had pre-planned to not see it, and then kind of basically all the dominoes were set up for disaster. At least that's what it felt like.
Yeah. It's it's unfortunate because Solo is one of those movies that I feel like, at least in my opinion, I actually enjoyed it. Like, I walked out of the theater and I was
did
like,
too.
That, you know what? That was good. Like that was a good Star Wars movie. And like, yeah, it's not George Lucas, but it was a bit like Rogue One, where it's like I walked out of the theater and I was like, dang, like that was awesome. It's like, yeah, it's a Star Wars movie. It's a Star Wars movie not done by Lucas. It's done by a completely different group of people, but it felt like Star Wars to me. And I don't know if it's like the familiar era that we're getting all these anthology movies. At this point when that movie came out, that's all we had was I think we had the 2 sequel films and Rogue One. So this was like the 4th Star Wars movie that Disney had done yet. And, it was, it was a mess, but at the same time, like, the final product, I feel like whatever Ron Howard did, he worked his magic and boom. So.
I thought so too. I was really happy with it, honestly. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I both walked out. Thought we had a great time. My only caveat I had with it is I'm not sure if it should have been Han Solo. It should have been some other random smuggler. Even dare I say Dash Rendar. Shout out to Phil here. Yeah. But honestly, even just some rando, I feel like people, the thing that held them back was that it was like another prequel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or someone playing Solo that's not Harrison Ford. I feel like
that was a big part too.
Yeah, that's a.
What is this, X-Men?
It's a deal breaker for a lot of people. This is the Adventures of Han playing in the background.
I feel like they just switch that scene up where Solo gets his last name, and the guy would just be looking at it and be like, "Oh, you're just some random person. Yeah. I'm gonna call you Han Rando."
The history is completely on a different linear curve.
Yeah. All right.
Han Rando.
Han Solo. Oh yeah, Han Rando. All right. Yeah. Okay. What do we got next? We have the Rise of Skywalker. All right, so Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly. To conclude the Skywalker saga, director Colin Trevorrow was tapped to oversee Episode 9 in 2015, writing the script with frequent collaborator Derek Connolly. Jack Thorne was hired for... Jack Thorne. Oh, I think he did the stage play for the Harry Potter 8. Was hired for revisions 2 years later, but the story remained unsatisfactory to Kennedy and Lucasfilm. In September 2017, Trevorrow and his writing team were fired from the project titled Duel of the Fates. With little time to spare and a bumped release to December 2019, J.J. Abrams was hired to write and direct the final installment, alongside Argo screenwriter Chris Terrio. The director delivered The Rise of Skywalker in just 18 months. The film was slammed by fans and critics for creative choices, with Abrams later lamenting that the sequel trilogy should have been planned. Oh, well, JJ, you're so smart. I mean, yeah, I think I agree with them. I mean, this is kind of what a lot of people were saying even when Episode 8 was coming out. And you'll notice that Episode 8 isn't on this list. And it's funny because it's true. There were no issues with that movie. From the get-go, Rian Johnson was hired. He wrote and directed that movie, and it went, clean sailing. Kennedy, in the press, had nothing but good things to say about Rian Johnson, and they also greenlit a trilogy for him to do at one point, and that is yet to be seen. But yeah, that movie went fairly well production-wise. So you'll notice that even though it's such a divisive movie, the actual kind of creation of it was done fairly without issue, right? Episode 9, though, Colin Trevorrow, Derek Connolly. What do you guys remember about this change up?
I thought Colin Trevorrow stepped away, not that he was fired.
Yeah, so this article puts it in the sense that he was fired, but I also remember there being quotes of him that made it sound like it was a mutual separation. More so that they are the one hiring him as they're the client, right? So he couldn't serve their purposes when it came to the writing of the story. So they just initially, they just decide, well, if you can't write a story that we want in time, then we should call it. And I think that's kind of how it ended.
Because maybe this is rumor. I'm not sure. It's been a long time. But what I had heard was he stepped away because all of the legacy characters were gone. Because Luke was Force Ghost because of 8, Han Solo was dead because of 7, and then Carrie Fisher had passed away.
Yeah, I think Carrie Fisher really threw a curveball in his script because she was supposed to be a main part of his story. And, when she passed away, it's like, what do you do with that? So, to rewrite his story that doesn't involve Leia, as an essential part of the plot, that's got to be tough, right? And the Duel of Fates or Duel of the Fates is a script that you can easily find on the internet. So anyone who wants to know what the rough outline of his story was, it's been leaked. I think there's been a fan who's turned it into a graphic novel. There's
cool.
Someone on YouTube who redid the entire movie using action figures. And this story is out there, and there's a question in whether or not it would have been better. I feel like this script, despite Leia's absence, could have been better in many, many ways. But there's people out there who also love The Rise of Skywalker as it is. So, it's always hard to say, but I think there's one thing that can be agreed upon is this entire trilogy should have been planned from the start. Just like George's 6-movie saga, you sat down, wrote the outline, and stuck to it. And that's just kind of the only way to do a big film saga these days. That's what Marvel does, right? They plan years in advance. So, Bryce, what do you remember about this? Sorry, I forget if you
Did they always plan to have 3 different directors for each of the movies, or for each movie?
Yeah. So it was originally planned to have a different director for each movie. Yeah. That way they could overlap production.
And I think the idea was also that's what happened for the original trilogy.
I mean, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the difference was George Lucas did the story, but it was 3 different directors that actually did all the filmmaking.
Right. Yeah. No, I think the main issue is that
George Lucas wasn't overseeing the story.
Yeah.
somebody in that position.
You don't have you need someone to kind of be the figurehead, all of them.
It's funny because we're talking about this as if it happened way in the past, but it really didn't happen that long ago, I feel like. But I don't know. The last 10 years is kind of going by in a flash.
People just want to move on.
Yeah. yeah, exactly.
I like to think of it in the past, so maybe that's why I feel like it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Let the past die.
Destroy it. Kill it if you have to.
That's never so relevant.
If you have to. Ray. Duel the Fates.
Oh man. Okay, next up on the list, Boba Fett anthology film. Actually, you know what? This is a movie that doesn't exist, so we'll just play this one. All right, Josh Trank. In 2014, Simon Kinberg was hired to write an anthology film centered on Boba Fett. Josh Trank was later brought in to direct with a release target of 2018. When Lucasfilm caught wind of Trank's disastrous Fantastic Four production, his appearance and reveal of the film at Celebration 2015 was cancelled, and he was subsequently shown the door. Ouch. James Mangold reports of a revived effort on a Boba Fett film came in light in early 2018, this time to be written and directed by Logan filmmaker James Mangold. When the movie was left off Disney's release slate for the targeted 2020 window, Bob Iger explained that there would be a slowdown on Star Wars films following Solo's poor performance. Mangold maintains a solid relationship with Lucasfilm, however, having served as the director on the forthcoming Indiana Jones 5. So that's the story of the Boba Fett movie. As we know, it was later turned into a series instead of a film. The details of those stories having been changed for the show, I have no idea. But what do you guys remember of this one?
I'm curious about that. How much they saved for the the series we got on Disney Plus. But when this happened, I do remember this quite vividly because it was a huge deal that Josh Trank, like, just I think he had like a breakdown on set for Fantastic Four, and then everything just snowballed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad because I remember you telling me quite a bit when this movie was announced with him helming as director that you really enjoyed Chronicle.
I did, yeah. I really enjoyed Chronicle quite a bit. But at the same time, it might be the same issue that some of the other directors have had, where they have a film that does really well, and it's more of an independent film, kind of artsy, and then they get given like this massive even billion-dollar project, and then they just can't handle it. Like, it's the production between the two just be so different.
Yeah. I think, honestly, in my own speculation, I feel like the script for this Boba Fett movie just wasn't solid enough that they probably didn't keep anything. Other than the fact that we see him crawl out of the Sarlacc pit, I think nothing else was kept. Just because of how much involvement that the Boba Fett show has with The Mandalorian, which at the time of this movie's announcement, The Mandalorian hadn't even come out yet. So,
right.
Maybe
for all we know, they got turned into The Mandalorian.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. That's hard to say. But James Mangold, though, that's a cool name to bring up. I mean, it's cool that he's involved with Indy.
Was the original plan to have a movie and then they turned it into a series?
Yeah, well, that's what it looks like to me, right? Because this movie never happened, and and then the next thing we get is a Boba Fett Disney Plus show. So, I guess the real question is how much was recycled from the no longer produced movie into the Disney Plus series, and my speculation is probably nothing. They probably just started over from scratch and recycled the same character into a story in which he crawls out of the Sarlacc pit, and then we go from there. But his initial introduction to the series was in Mando, right? So it makes me wonder if nothing was kept at all. And, they were just like, you know what? Let's just toss him in Mandalorian. We'll fill in the gaps later with his own show. And, Robert did such a great job with that Mandalorian episode that's let's just give the show to him. So, whether you like it or hate it, in terms of Book of Boba Fett, I mean, we got what we got. And, I recently rewatched the whole show, and I think I was saying this on a previous podcast episode, but I actually didn't think it was that bad. I did enjoy Book of Boba, a decent amount. There's things that I still don't really like, but I mean, overall, it's an enjoyable story, and there's some pretty good moments in there. So,
maybe it was just that the bar was so high from Mandalorian.
I think so. I think maybe that's what it was. People just connected with Mando and Grogu so much that it's kind of hard to top that, I guess. But I know I remember speaking to when we had Jess on from the Boba Fett fan club, and it's she had her things that she liked and disliked about the show as well. But I think overall, I think it's just if you're a Boba Fett fan to the core, I don't think there's any Boba Fett story that people are just gonna just absolutely despise, right? You just love the character, right? If he's slinging a gun and looking awesome, there's something to enjoy.
That's true. I do want to say I almost am a little bit disappointed that there wasn't a James Mangold Boba Fett film, because I think that would have been super cool. If it was anything like Logan, I would love to see it.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. Is how different would the character approach have been if James Mangold had helmed the show instead of Robert, right? Would they have made him a softer, more protagonist character that joins a Tusken Raider family, or would they have kind of kept it to more of a gritty, we don't really see his face all that much kind of guy, right? That's definitely a big question. All right, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the anthology trilogy. This is a bit of a story. Stephen Daltrey, before being greenlit for a Disney Plus series, a project focused on Obi-Wan Kenobi was being developed as a film. Lucasfilm approached star Ewan McGregor in 2015 about reprising the role of the Jedi Master after the actor expressed interest in doing a spin-off film, and a deal was quickly made to begin development. Stephen Daldry was hired to write and direct by 2017, with Hossein Amini later joining the writing team. It was later revealed that the film was being developed. Film being developed was the first in a trilogy, with the Boba Fett film out as a candidate for 2020 following Trank's dismissal. The Kenobi movie was expected to take its place until Solo happened. Lucasfilm abandoned any plans for future spin-off films, and Daltrey was let go as the odds of seeing an Obi-Wan project dwindled. So this was kept more so under wraps. This was less in the spotlight than a lot of other things, only because the rumors of Ewan McGregor returning to play Obi-Wan was out there. But then until they finally announced the show, I don't think a lot of people realized that this was intended to be a trilogy of films, back when the anthology thing was a thing, right? Because you guys remember when Rogue One was being marketed as a Star Wars story?
That was an anthology film.
Yeah, exactly. So like Solo a Star Wars story, Rogue One a Star Wars story. Like there was going to be a whole lineup of anthology Star Wars films with, a Star Wars story. So we probably would have had, like, Josh Trank's Boba Fett movie probably would have been called Boba Fett, a Star Wars story.
Josh Trank, a Star Wars story.
and you guys don't think they're gonna do that anymore? Like, are they done?
No, they're
the
like
Star Wars story.
That's the thing, is like they are, right? Like a couple of years ago when Bob Iger, after Solo happened, like that was the big curveball that I think like they just didn't expect this movie to do so badly, that they realized, okay, we got to change our marketing or the way that we're doing these stories, because like we can't just keep doing this, whatever this is not working. So when Disney Plus became a really successful thing and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni kind of knocked it out of the park with The Mandalorian, I think a lot of these ideas that they had for film, in the theater style stories, they probably just took those concepts and just said, hey, let's just make a show. Like, let's just make a season. And then if it goes well, we can make another one. So, Book of Boba Fett, I mean, maybe we'll get a season 2. Who knows? But Obi-Wan Kenobi, I mean, that got turned into a 12, or how many episodes was it? 6 episode season. And whether we get another one or not, I mean, like if we did, they'd have to probably make it interesting and maybe even make it without him fighting Vader again. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it was a trilogy of films to me is quite fascinating. Did you guys recall any kind of word out there, being spoken of the Obi-Wan Kenobi, a Star Wars story?
No, I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I had like vague rumors that it was a movie before it got made into a, or announced as like a TV show. But
Yeah. All right.
There was a lot of speculation, people wanting it to happen, but I didn't hear anything about it officially.
Yeah. No, it was very kind of kept under wraps. I do remember some brief kind of whispers, but not anything official until they announced the show. All right. Rian Johnson's untitled Star Wars trilogy. Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy were so pleased with the smooth production of The Last Jedi that their working relationship with Rian Johnson, they announced as the writer and director who would take the reins of his own Star Wars trilogy. The news broke during a quarterly investors call with Bob Iger in 2017 November, a month before episode 8 in theaters. Sorry. The backlash the film received since has been well documented, and no forward progress has been made on Rian Johnson's trilogy in 5 years. While Johnson maintains that he hopes the project will happen, his focus on the Knives Out franchise has led to limited communication with Kathleen Kennedy. Between the lack of movement on the trilogy and the general fan disinterest in Johnson's return, the movies are unlikely to happen, though the director's project has yet to be officially canceled. So yeah, that's kind of where the status is. It's kind of sitting in limbo. And I remember about a year or two ago, someone tweeted to Rian Johnson, like, hey, is your Star Wars trilogy still happening? And he replied with a tweet being like, yup.
Yeah, it
with
was
a little like
and then fist bump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that too.
Yeah, just a little yup.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because Ryan Johnson on Twitter, but to me, that always felt a lot like trying to be snarky to the haters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like it was totally his just way of kind of being like, yeah, suck it. But yeah, I mean, okay, like to be honest, like the guy makes good movies. You know, like I said at the beginning of this list, it is incredibly hard to make a good Star Wars movie that everyone likes, right?
Yeah.
And for him to be thrown into the sequel trilogy to make the middle chapter, which according to a lot of authors and acclaimed film directors who make trilogy of films, the second one is always the hardest to do. So like how is a guy supposed to be a creative filmmaker when you're so locked into like what came before and you have to set up what comes next, and at that time The Force Awakens had already received a decent amount of like fan criticism for various things. So it's like, what are you going to do? Right. And, you obviously want to surprise people and, make it a movie that people don't just kind of guess the whole thing before it's out. I think the best call would be to just put him in a place in which he can make a Star Wars trilogy, but, make it outside of the Skywalker saga, where that people feel so kind of, all of us like feel so protective over, the main series of films, right? Yeah. It's a touchy subject for,
I sort of agree with you. Because I actually really like Ryan Johnson's films, and that's why I was excited when he was going to do episode 8.
Yeah,
I really liked Looper a lot, and since then,
yes,
I really enjoyed Knives Out, and I haven't seen Glass Onion yet, but I'm planning to watch it because Knives Out was so good.
Yeah.
So, and he's one of, as we talked about earlier, he's one of the few directors that has these more independent films, kind of doing his own thing, but was able to handle all the weight and the stress of doing a franchise. Mm-hmm. The problem I think lied in with Ryan Johnson and Star Wars, at least personally, was he didn't seem to care as much about following the lore and sticking to the rules that George had already established, which to me I think is where a lot of it falls apart. Because I think, and maybe that he tried too hard to go against what people were guessing, which honestly, there's so many big fans that are all going to speculate all the time. So you're never going to be able to trick all of them and still have a good story. At least, that's my opinion on that.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
But the first point about him, I think he's such a creative that he just wants to do what he wants, right? Not work within a pre-established box of rules, which is the one thing that makes me a little hesitant about getting another trilogy. Mm-hmm. But if he's able to not like break stuff, then I would still be interested.
Maybe it's just one of those things that he just needs Story Group to have more kind of say in his script. If it's anything like lore breaking material or, pre-established things in the canon that shouldn't be tampered with, like maybe someone just needs to be the guy to step in and be like, no, you can't do that. Right. Like I think Star Wars needs a Kevin Feige sort of voice in the mix, which it doesn't have. Right. Like that's, I think, why a lot of these Star Wars shows are being so successful, because like it just works. Right. Like there's people making these shows that, like, Dave, he just knows the franchise well. He just knows the series well. Andor, it was done extremely well in a way in which it didn't tamper with any crazy lore stuff, but it was a really high production, great show, quality wise, production wise, executed a story really well. And it was about a character that not a lot of people knew about, in terms of like what came before Rogue One. So it made it an interesting story to kind of see like where this character is going to go. So if Ryan Johnson was given his own creative liberty to come up with his own characters, and just kind of make a story that didn't tamper with a lot of big events in the
And he's
in the
not allowed to
canon.
have Force users.
Yes, yeah, no Force users, stuff like that. I would love to see a movie from him, in that regards, right?
That's a good point. Yeah, I think he'd make a really good, like a series or like an Andor type series.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think he's talented. He just needs to play to his strengths.
Yeah. So yeah, that is on the list. But again, we're not sure where that trilogy stands. Maybe they're just letting the fandom cool off for a little while before they bring him back. But in the professional world, they have a good relationship, and I'm sure we'll see Rian Johnson again someday. Benioff and Weiss, the untitled film series. This is a good one. David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. A bombshell was dropped in early 2018 when Lucasfilm announced that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss would be developing a series of films in conjunction with Rian Johnson's trilogy, set in a new era for Star Wars. Their work was scheduled to commence following the completion of Game of Thrones' final season, which the duo reportedly rushed to dive into their films. The poor reception of the season and the pair's urge to get it out were the beginning of their falling out with Lucasfilm. Following a peculiar mega deal with streamer Netflix, it was announced that Benioff and Weiss's Star Wars contract had been terminated on October 2019. Reports indicated that the project was to be centered on the origins of the Jedi, but the ideas have been shelved. What do you guys remember of this? So with you, Blake, yeah.
What I recall was this kind of all happened after the fallout of the last season of Game of Thrones.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like that's definitely part of it. Like they got the contract with Lucasfilm, and then the final season was coming out, which they were in production with, and like the rushing of getting that done to get to the Star Wars stuff ultimately, I think, assisted in kind of maybe being a falling out or a series of falling out events like that. They just, didn't really see that as like, oh, well, no one liked the Game of Thrones finale season, so like, what the heck are we hiring these guys for? So
yeah, that would have been so awkward.
Yeah.
Them showing up on their first day and they're just like, all right, ready to work on the new Star Wars show. They're just like, ugh.
Yeah. No, I think that it's kind of like in my head, I just picture like two guys trying to like lift a shelf and, mount it on the wall, with delicate collectibles on top. And then someone behind is like, hey guys, come and help me with this. And then it's like, happens to be this like amazing thing. So they just drop the shelf and just go running. Right. And then smash all the collectibles. That is exactly what I think like happened. Like they built up Game of Thrones to be this epic
they got
show.
so excited that they just messed Game of Thrones up.
Yeah, I think they literally
that's
just
kind of what I thought too.
Yeah,
Really?
that's what I thought. Yeah, when I saw that final season, I was like, dang, like this was really rushed. Like I know they had a crazy budget for this season, but like, so there was less episodes, but yeah, like whoa. So yeah, I feel like
more. I'm just glad we have more things for people to be upset about Star Wars fans.
Yeah.
Now they can blame Star Wars fans for ruining Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and then they didn't even make a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
It's like they dropped the ball to come running to Lucasfilm, and then because they dropped the ball on the other thing, they ended up, I don't want to say it's like, again, like it's not clear, like, this is all speculation, but I don't think it helped, right? And then the next thing we know is they're taking a contract with Netflix to make stuff for them. So, goodbye Star Wars series. But the idea that it was an Origins of the Jedi story, again, that's all rumored. Who knows what it would have been about, but
Would have been cool though.
Like
it was kind of like an not like a very, I don't know, because we have there's a really old I think it's Expanded Universe now, right? Like the comic series about the Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, the Expanded Universe. Yeah.
I mean, there's lots to kind of work with there.
There is, yeah. If they use it, that is, yeah.
Yeah. Would have been cool.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Andor. That is next on the list. Steven Skiff. In November 2018, Bob Iger announced that Rogue One prequel series, I Rogue One prequel series following Cassian Andor would be coming to Disney+. The show was pitched as a spy thriller project, with the Americans writer Stephen Skiff set to serve as showrunner. Script issues arose, and Kennedy contracted Tony Gilroy to come back and take a look at the story, who instead developed a manifesto for what he thought the show should be. Gilroy joined the team for Andor full-time, initially set to write, direct, and work alongside Skiff. In late 2019, Skiff was released from the project entirely, with Gilroy taking over as showrunner and hiring a team of directors. The series was reworked to be comprised of two 12-episode seasons, the first of which has received near universal appraisal from Star Wars fans. So this is going to be a short-lived one on the list, but I actually didn't think there were any issues with Andor, and then I read this list and I was like, oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's a surprising one.
Yeah, it is a surprising one because, like, I mean, we talked about Andor like a lot lately, but what do you guys think about this? You know, in hearing all that.
What's Schiff known for? The Americans.
Schiff, yeah, the Americans. I've never seen it. You know,
I haven't either.
Yeah, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. If anyone's seen that, he doesn't have a whole lot. He doesn't have a whole lot under his belt. He did the screenplay for American Assassin, which is a movie that I saw. That movie was pretty good. It didn't receive insane reviews or anything like that, but I thought it was all right.
Wait, is that the one with Hayden?
No, it's the one with Dylan O'Brien.
Oh.
Yeah. And,
I see.
what's his face?
Yeah.
What's his face? Batman, you know?
Huh.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, bit of an interesting little thing there. Not every Star Wars show is perfect.
I didn't hear anything about this until you brought it up in the article today. So this is totally news to me. I thought the project was really smooth.
Yeah. So it's a bit curious to read that.
This is one of the only times I think, well, for whatever reason they let this guy go, you know, ended up being a good thing maybe.
Right. Yeah.
One of the first times that's happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. J.D. Dillard's untitled Star Wars film. J.D. Dillard and Matt Owens. Word broke in early 2020 that Slate writer and director J.D. Dillard signed a deal with Lucasfilm to develop an untitled Star Wars movie, working alongside Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. writer Matt Owens. The specific nature of the project remains a mystery, though early reports suggest that the Sith world Exegol could be a focus. But the film never began production, or pre-production, as Dillard revealed in November that the project and his partnership with Lucasfilm had ended. This I had no idea. I recognized the name J.D. Dillard. I remember it being somewhere on one of those kind of like, should we take it with a grain of salt articles? So, you know, maybe there was some negotiations to be held, but did you guys hear anything about this?
Nope.
I don't know. No.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's about like Palpatine makes a cult.
Yeah.
It's about him like gathering all these like weird people on a planet.
To be fair, I actually am quite curious about what's going on with that. Like, were they always there?
Yeah,
Did
maybe they were going to explain
Palpatine
it.
set it up? Did Palpatine find them? Like, I don't know if they ever explained that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's still some holes to fill, I think. So maybe this film is needed.
30 years of Palpatine slowly indoctrinating his friends and family.
Yeah.
Into a weird cult.
Yeah. I never really liked Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'm going to be honest. So this isn't really
Yeah,
a
I didn't either.
No. So it's not a huge deal breaker. But yeah, Sith World of Exegol, I mean, that's obviously a very new concept and came out of JJ's script for Rise of Skywalker. So, you know, maybe it had something to do with that. Maybe it didn't. Who knows? But either way, it's over, and I don't think we're missing out if we don't know what we're getting. So,
Fair enough.
yeah. Okay, what's the next one on our list here? Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're back to Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show this time. Stuart Beattie, one of the original writers for the Kenobi trilogy. Stuart Beattie spent over a year developing the film on which Obi-Wan Kenobi series was based. The writer left the project after the movie was cancelled, but his works live on in various moments on the Disney Plus show, including the incorporation of Darth Vader as a main antagonist. Hossein Amini, the first writer hired to help Daltrey develop the Kenobi film. Kathleen Kennedy grew unhappy with Hossein Amini's less hopeful story, and pre-production was stopped in early 2020. When Amini was fired, Joby Harold joined the project for rewrites, which involved major changes as he and director Deborah Chow fought to center Obi-Wan's story on Leia and how the relationship would later pay off with Ben Solo. Production finally began in 2021 following COVID delays and new scripts, with the series dropping in time for Star Wars Celebration in Anaheim. So that clears up a little bit of stuff. I actually didn't know that Deborah Chow fought to center Obi-Wan's story on Leia because of Ben Solo. And to be honest, I don't really know where the connection comes in.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Not like I
about
really
that.
made that connection after watching it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but
I still can't really see it, honestly. Like, maybe just the relevance of having Leia die in episode 9 was reason enough to kind of use her as a main character at some point. Like, not really sure, but
You know what you should do is you should tweet at Deborah Chow and ask if she wouldn't mind sharing the specific moments in the Kenobi show that was supposed to pertain to Ben Solo.
yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. I think we'll do that right after we finish up here. Yeah. Right.
Because honestly, now that's piqued my interest. I'm curious because I didn't pick up on that either while watching the series.
because
Yeah.
there aren't a lot of connections between Obi-Wan and Ben Solo, right? So it's hard to see the connections. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Rogue Squadron. Patty Jenkins, during Disney's Investor Day event in December 2020, Kathleen Kennedy announced that Rogue Squadron would be the next theatrical Star Wars release, aiming for a holiday 2023 arrival. How exciting, guys, this year. Wonder Woman's Patty Jenkins was revealed to be directing what was described as a pilot story featuring X-Wings. Dora writer Matthew Robinson joined the development team to write, though the extent of his work is unknown. In light of Wonder Woman's 1984's poor reception, word broke out in late 2021 that Rogue Squadron was in trouble and would be missing its release date, something later confirmed by Kennedy. Taika Waititi's film was tentatively bumped into the 2023 slot while Jenkins worked to refine her movie's script, exiting Cleopatra to do so. What was once a delay now seems to be a worse fate for the film, as Rogue Squadron has been removed from Disney's theatrical calendar. As Jenkins is presumed to have joined the ranks of fired directors, with Lucasfilm and Disney's troubling tendency to struggle with project development, there are a number of films and shows on the horizon that could lose creative leads. The next Star Wars movie won't be released until 2025 at the earliest, barring a calendar shakeup with Avatar 3 and leaving plenty of time for a few more fired directors to earn their wings.
The person writing this is getting a bit clever.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta be honest. Like, Patty Jenkins, she did come out and post something online about her involvement with Rogue Squadron and cleared up a lot of the shenanigans that people were assuming had happened. And her update is that Rogue Squadron is still happening, and that nothing has happened in terms of her association with the film, and it will eventually come out, but priorities were reworked at one point. And she did send out like a huge long, I think it was like an Instagram post or a tweet or something, kind of clearing up some of the rumors. And based on the date of this article, it seems to be, I forget if this might be slightly around the time that she posted that update. So, it might even be this article that caused her to kind of come out with clearing up some of the truth. So definitely take this chunk as a grain of salt, because I don't know how much of it is accurate, but based on just like the promo material that we have for Rogue Squadron, that little video that they did, and the idea that we're getting a movie on X-Wings, I mean, there's a chance that we could still see this movie. So what do you guys think about it?
I still really want an X-Wing based movie. I think that'd be super cool. I really want it to be something in the light of oh gosh, how am I blanking on the name right now? That Tom Cruise one.
Top Gun.
Top Gun, thank you. I think that'd be super cool.
Right. Yeah. Top Gun style Star Wars movie would be pretty sick. Yeah.
It's like Disney, you'd have to be very confident a movie's going to be made to like make a release thing like they did for Rogue Squadron, right? Like to put her in a video, release it for everyone to see, like.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be very strange if they didn't make it now.
It would
hard
be.
to-
It would be. But then again,
you guys-
it's a bit like that show that we never saw the light of day, that Rangers of the New Republic.
Did they make any video teasers or
No,
trailers for that?
well, no, but there was like a logo done up and everything. Like it was
Right.
it was a show that was going to happen in the what you mentioned there, Blake, the Filoniverse. Yeah, that just ended up not being a thing. I guess, I don't know. It kind of like happened around the same time that what's her name? Gina Carano exited Star Wars. So
Yeah.
it's around that time that show was put on the shelf. So I guess she was a main part, but maybe they just didn't see any kind of, maybe other things happened that they were like, yeah, you know what? We actually don't need this after all. So yeah, I mean, based on the Mando 3 trailer, we are going to see some returning characters that, may have been in that show, and, pilots and whatnot. What's his name? Appa from help me out, Blake. Kim's Convenience. Kim's Convenience.
Oh,
Last
yeah,
Airbender.
yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
fine. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, was Airbender. That's funny. I'm like, I know this name. What is it
Papa,
from?
yip.
Yip.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, Blake, what are your thoughts on this one?
I am surprised to hear that it got pushed. This is, as Bryce was saying, it seemed like this was going to be like they're going full ahead with it, right? So This is news to me that they pushed it. I still want it to happen because it seems like it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It'd be
Seems like they really don't have faith in, if like someone's thing bombs, they're like, oh no, now you're
Yeah.
gonna make our thing bomb. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. Like I don't know, Wonder Woman and kind of Game of Thrones and a lot of these previous failures, they can fail for other reasons, not just the directors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
But
it's true.
I don't know. I guess it's a risk that they're not willing to take.
Right.
Actually need to step out. I apologize. I got to go right now.
Oh, no worries, man. All right, we'll catch you later. All right, Bryce, just you and I. Let's power through this thing. Taika Waititi's
Who there
untitled
must be.
Taika Waititi's untitled Star Wars film. Taika Waititi and Christy Wilson Carnes announced as part of 2020 Star Wars Day festivities. Taika Waititi and Christy Wilson Carnes were tapped to pen a new film. With the former serving as director, Waititi's immediate attention was given to Thor: Love and Thunder, which was met with backlash from Marvel fans and critics. The untitled film is now in a state of limbo, as Waititi has been trying to figure out the story for 3 years. But it might be shelved for good, as Damon Lindelof's project aims to be the next release.
What's that project?
I don't know, actually. I haven't...
Damon Lindelof.
Damon Lindelof. Yeah, I honestly, I haven't heard anything about this one. Maybe it is on this list, but yeah. What did you think when Taika Waititi was announced as a director for a Star Wars movie?
Well, he seemed to be, he's had his hands in like a lot of different Star Wars projects, so it seemed like the natural course of things, right?
Yeah.
But also, I think we're getting a bit Waititi'd out in Hollywood and in films and stuff. So, he's just been doing so much. And
didn't he directed a Mandalorian episode or two? Didn't he?
Yeah, and he was, he was cast as the IG-88 droids. And,
Yeah.
So, I don't know. This one, for some reason, I feel like isn't going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I have a good feeling it's not going to happen either. I mean, nothing against the guy, but it just seems like one of those things that is like, I think Ryan Johnson's trilogy is probably more likely to happen than this one.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually.
I mean, there's been nothing about that, right? Like,
no, yeah, there's been nothing, but I feel like it's gonna be one of those things that just sneaks up. Yeah, I got a feeling. It's just like Celebration's gonna kind of come around the corner and
shake things up.
Yeah, they're just gonna be like, you know what, Ryan Johnson's coming back, and so, yeah. All right.
And
go ahead. Yeah.
Who's Kirsty Wilson Cairns? What has she been?
That I actually don't know. Let's take a look
do a
here.
quick search. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't look. Oh, 1917. She was the writer on 1917.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That was pretty awesome. Yeah. Okay. Other than that, she hasn't really done too much else that I've recognized. Bunch of shorts, but talented writer.
What do you think? Do you think Waititi could make a good Star Wars film?
You know what? Like, I think given his own kind of like deliberity to pull something off, like without having to make it relevant to another story, I think he kind of like Ryan Johnson. I think he could probably pull off a pretty good Star Wars story. Because he only directed a Mandalorian episode. That's not saying too much because it's probably written by somebody else. But yeah, I mean, like he's got some good comedic value to him, and I think he has the ability to make some pretty good characters. Like, even though Love and Thunder, the Thor movie, did you see it?
Yeah, I did.
So, like, I don't know. Like, say what you will about it. I thought Christian Bale's villain was really well done.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I think he has the ability to come up with some really good characters and just kind of help pull out a really good performance out of the actors. If he's got a writer under his belt, like Kirsty Wilson Cairns, like who did 1917, maybe we could get a really good, like gritty kind of rebel movie or something. Yeah, like maybe like a kind of like that Battlefront Twilight Company novel or something, just like about the rebel troops. Like maybe focus on a new set of characters and. You got some comedy,
like
you got some action.
The battle scenes from Solo, kind of like gritty, right?
Yeah, stuff like that, right? Like I think, maybe he could pull off a really good movie, but I guess it's yet to be seen. So
it would all depend on like the type of humor, because I think sometimes with TD movies, I don't know, he almost like his personality kind of takes the whole movie over.
Totally.
His personality is almost stronger than like. You think of it as a Waititi movie first and a Marvel movie second.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. But
yeah, it's almost like Ryan Reynolds. It's like if Ryan Reynolds is in a movie, it's like it's a Ryan Reynolds movie. It's no longer whatever franchise it's part of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those ones that either do really well or just bomb.
Yeah. Lando, Justin Simien, among the many Star Wars Disney Plus series announced during the Big Investors Day event, Lando has drawn the least amount of chatter. Intended to serve as a connector to Solo of some kind, and developed by Dear White People's Justin Simien, the biggest holdup for the project appears to be lead actor Donald Glover's busy schedule. Lucasfilm still maintains an interest in completing the show, but Simien wouldn't be at fault if plans fall through due to lack of movement. You remember the Disney conference that they had when they like showed the title card and everything for Lando?
Like for this movie? No, I don't remember that.
Disney Plus show, but
okay.
It's a little curious. I mean, like it's still up in the air.
Was it when they unveiled all of them?
Exactly. Yeah. So Lando was one of those things. Maybe we're looking at another dead project. Who knows? But this is probably the closest thing to a Solo 2 that we'll probably get. I would imagine it takes place after Solo, just based on the way it ended. But I mean,
there's so many canceled Star Wars stories and anthologies. Maybe they just need to make like a series, kind of like a Star Wars Visions, but just like a series of just short episodes of all these characters in them.
Totally.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Would you prefer the show to take place before or after Solo?
Um, man, I don't know. I think after, the rise of Cloud City and like that'd be very cool.
That would be cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd want to see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's a story we don't have still, which is good. So
Yeah.
yeah. Damon Lindelof. Oh, here we go. Damon Lindelof, untitled Star Wars film. All right. Reports of a Star Wars film being written by Watchmen creator Damon. Oh, that's what he did. Broke earlier in the year and were recently corroborated. Shortly after Star Wars Celebration in May, Lindelof held secret writers' room meetings for 2 weeks with key Lucasfilm executives and co-writer Justin Britt Gibson. The story is said to take place after the events of The Rise of Skywalker, with the potential for characters from the sequel trilogy to appear. This is that one. Did you see the rumors that, or the post that Daisy Ridley was at Lucasfilm in California?
Oh, just doing some like discussion about this possibly?
Well, she posted a photo of some prop or statue or something that was in the halls of, I believe it was either LDAC or somewhere down there where they have like a, maybe at the ranch or something. But yeah, she was at Lucasfilm and people were freaking out because it's like, oh, Rey's at Lucasfilm. Like, what the heck? So that's where these rumors come in. But how do you feel about a story taking place after? Because, obviously this isn't confirmed yet. Celebration this year is around the corner, so maybe we'll get some confirmation there. But how do you feel with a movie set after The Rise of Skywalker?
I mean, they either have to do something with the sequel trilogy or bury it as far as they can, right? Like but they can't let it sit in limbo. I think that's the worst thing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's definitely,
yeah.
I'd say, like, as far as my 2 cents on it, I would say like I think if they pull off a good story and they don't tie it in to make it an unofficial episode 10, just kind of make it its own thing and just have it take place somewhere else with other characters. Like, I would be fine seeing small appearances of some of the characters we had in the sequels, but yeah, I mean, like, I don't want it to be that unspoken thing. It's like, yeah, this is just basically episode 10,
yeah, it would be a really tough sell.
It would be. Yeah, it would be. Sharmeen Obad Chinoy, in a surprise move given her Pakistani exclusive body of work, Lucasfilm hired Miss Marvel's Sharmeen Obad Chinoy to direct Lindelof's picture. She joins a growing list of Marvel creators to be tapped for a Star Wars project, though her fellow alum don't have great histories of sticking around. Turnover in the director's chair is possible at any time for still developing the film, and if Lindelof goes, she is naturally probably to go as well. So, it's stapled onto the end there. Sean Levy's untitled Star Wars film. Word broke out that Deadpool 3 Sean Levy had been tapped to helm an upcoming Star Wars film, which was later confirmed by the director himself. The current plan is for the director to see his Deadpool duties through to completion before moving over to Star Wars, but the film is reportedly different than the other projects currently in development. With no attached writer announced, the movie could be over half a decade away from production. That is a long time.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I love Deadpool. You love Deadpool?
Yeah, for a Deadpool type movie. I'm not sure what kind of Star Wars story we're getting in 6 years.
Yeah.
Can't wait. In 6 years, we're gonna get Salacious Crumb, a Star Wars story.
Salacious Crumb. Oh man. I mean, okay, well, yeah, this guy. I mean, clearly, if Sean Levy's gonna be doing a Star Wars movie, there's a good chance we'll see Ryan Reynolds in Star Wars as well, because Sean Levy's been involved with Free Guy and the Adam Project, so he's got a good working relationship with Ryan Reynolds. And yeah, I don't know how I feel about this one. I mean, like, so long as he can really kind of change up his style of storytelling and make it not a Ryan Reynolds comedy, then I think we're in good water, because those have all been good movies that he's done. It's just they're all very kind of similar in terms of the style, right? So
it's about the same situation as a Watiti movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Kevin Feige's untitled Star Wars film. This is also big news. After years of begging the MCU and Star Wars fans alike, it was revealed by Marvel Studios that Kevin Feige would be stepping into a galaxy far, far away back in 2019. He would serve as a producer for the film alongside Kennedy, but with his Marvel duties being all encompassed, the time frame for production and release hasn't been set. So this could easily go away, but I remember the buzz around Kevin Feige being announced that he would join Star Wars. And do you remember anything about this?
Man, I must live in a hole.
That's all good. What are your thoughts on Kevin Feige doing a Star Wars movie?
Okay, so what is Kevin Feige famous for? What movies?
Well, he's just the guy that kind of helms the MCU. Like he's like
Right.
the head honcho of the MCU. So like for him to produce a Star Wars movie, I don't think he'd be directing, but he'd be kind of
Right.
guiding the story and doing a number of other things. His involvement with Star Wars though, like is there like if you just look at any Marvel movie
I don't
ever,
know.
like it's a tough one, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like it just seems like he just seems like a big name. Like, does
Yeah.
he want to do Star Wars?
Yeah.
Does he just need something to do? Because what do you do after like, the Titan that was the MCU?
Yeah. Well, and it's still going too. Like he's still
going. I guess.
Yeah,
Is he
like
still kind of
dude, like he dropped like news on like phase
Okay.
5, 6, or 4, 5, and 6, like all in a day. Like they were like, yeah, here's the next like 10 years of Marvel movies.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how he's going to find time to do a Star Wars
come
movie.
on.
Yeah, there's no way.
Chill
so
out.
chill. It's like I don't think it's gonna happen.
That's
Kevin,
silly.
come on, man. Michael, along with Marvel people, this looks like the last one on the list. Michael Waldron, as part of a larger deal with Disney, Loki scribe Michael Waldron will be penning the script for Feige's film. Loki was awesome, so that's cool. In May, the writer revealed that he was deep in the process of developing the story, one that will be disconnected from the other Star Wars projects. A director for the film has not been named yet, though Waldron's strong working relationship with Feige should see their film through to completion. There aren't many Star Wars movies in the works at the moment, and for a good reason. The method of hiring Hollywood's latest greatest and then sacking them after one lackluster output isn't a winning formula. Kathleen Kennedy has discussed the need for commitment from the creative minds she brings in, but that needs to be reciprocated by Lucasfilm. While some of the fired directors and writers were likely deserving of their fates, it seems that Lucasfilm and Disney can get trigger happy. Stephen Daldry, for instance, didn't need to lose his job. Obi-Wan Kenobi was fine as a series, not special, but could have been gotten a movie treatment. The fallout from Solo's box office bomb changed the whole approach for Star Wars, and it's easy to question if the wrong lessons were learned. And I'm gonna ignore the rest here, but that's an interesting point. I mean, like, do you think that the bombing of Solo they learned a bad lesson? Like, do you think that you would prefer Star Wars movies rather than all these Star Wars shows that keep coming out, or like, what's the deal?
I mean, at this point, I feel like we've seen more success via the Star Wars shows.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, like, I would say that the success of the shows has definitely, like, you can't be missed, right? Like, the success of Mandalorian too,
is maybe
especially.
because is that maybe because like modern Star Wars? Do you think it fits like a TV show format better, or do you think it's just that they're incompetent at making movies?
It's I think it's a touch of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think like Star Wars has always been designed to be episodic, right? So like for a Star Wars show to happen, I mean, like this was George's idea, like for a Star Wars to be a show. I mean, like he's the guy who came up with Clone Wars every week. So, it was just like, it is a natural fit for Star Wars to take place on. And I think that's why the animated shows just kind of never, rarely, they're rarely a miss. I mean, like they tend to always hit the right note for me, but the live action shows, it's always a bit, it's like, it's always a bit questionable. And I think it usually comes down to maybe just like the rush aspect of not having the time to plan out this epic story, because like, you look at any of the George Lucas movies, they were planned years in advance, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was like slapped together and in less than 3 years, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, discussion started way earlier, but I mean, like, the movie was canceled. We took some concepts, we made a show out of it. It's like, you know, and you get the person directing it is you know, she was a guest director on Mando, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, got a good working relationship. All right, yeah, let's, you know, you want to tell this story? Cool, let's do it. I don't think that's the attitude that they should have for like a lot of things. And yet I think it's just the way that they just tend to go about it, just because, like, you know, it's a money machine. You know, it's like they make more money in a year with all this more Star Wars stuff. The more Star Wars stuff they put out, the more money they make, you know, aside from Solo. So I think that obviously plays a part in the fact
they're just going to do whatever's profitable.
Yeah. And then when you have so many Star Wars shows on the go at the same time, problems tend to happen, and, you know, continuity tends to be broken, and you know, the list kind of goes on. But I do miss going to the theater to see a Star Wars movie. I mean, seeing as the last one that was there was Rise of Skywalker, like, I think it's about time that we get another one. I'm willing to wait for it.
Like a while, hey?
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, I'm willing to wait for it. If they just told us just straight up, we're gonna the next Star Wars movie, and unlike the other ones where it's, you know, they've announced a year and just never came through with anything, it would be nice if they actually said, this is the movie we're gonna do, this is the year that we're gonna release it, that's the date. You know, much like some of these Marvel movies, like, they hold their date true up until the point where it comes out, like years in advance. You know, here's our director, here's the writer, we're really excited to do this movie, and meanwhile enjoy the shows that we're going to be putting out on Disney Plus. Like, I'd be totally happy with that. I think the issue is
transparency.
Totally, yeah, transparency is key. I mean, like, you know, I think the main issue here is, like, they'll announce something and then just not do it. And then it'll be like, oh yeah, you remember that thing that they did? Which is exactly what we're doing today. You know, looking back at all these things, I was like, yeah, you remember when that was announced? Yeah. And then it just never happened. So yeah, I think, like, that's also a big thing too, is just, like, commitment to the creativity, to the process, you know, commitment.
I don't know, maybe Solo has made them realize that lesson, and maybe that's how they're going to take it from now on. Maybe they're just going to take it a bit more slow.
Yeah.
You know, quality rather than quantity.
Right.
And in the meantime, like, make the quantity TV shows while they work on the quality of the movies.
Yeah, exactly. But
we can hope.
Yeah, well, yeah, only one can hope. Yeah.
One can hope.
All right, a huge thank you to our co-host Blake, who has been so fantastic over the last little while with the podcast and coming on each week. And of course, our good friend Bryce as well, who has been more than willing to stick around this late in the game, as well as every other time he showed up on the show. I mean, it's so great to have friends who love Star Wars chatting about Star Wars, and, you know, wanted to have them on the show, and them wanted to come on, and, you know, it's really awesome, and we love doing this. We love doing this as a hobby. You know, it's not a money-making machine, guys. I mean, this podcast is ad-free, doesn't make a single cent. So we do love to see our numbers grow, though, and would appreciate if you could leave a 5-star review and share this show with a friend. So speaking of which, actually, we got something coming in on the comm link, it looks like. So, yeah, let's take a listen.
This is Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Star Wars Escape Pod. Don't forget to leave a review that would make even Master Yoda proud.
That's right. Make Master Yoda proud, and, you know, we would love to see those awesome stellar reviews that you guys can come up with on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever platform is your choice. If you have the option to leave a review, that would be fantastic. And ways to reach us at the podcast is our email, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter with the handle at SW Escape Podcast, all in the description of this podcast episode, or YouTube, wherever you're watching. And our email is swescapepodcast@gmail.com. Feel free to send us some text, voice memo, pictures, whatever. You know, send us your Star Wars stories. You know, we'd love to hear from our listeners. You know, you can just chat with us. Just chat, you know. Tell us, what's the first Star Wars movie you ever watched? You know, what'd you think of this past week on The Bad Batch with Faster? Or perhaps what is the most disappointing higher fire moment in the Disney era that you heard about today? We'd love to hear about it. Join us on Swell with @SW Escape Podcast. You can find us there for questions of the week. Join us on Discord. Get in touch in the forums. There's plenty of ways for us to communicate with you. And they're all listed down below. Find our YouTube premieres happening the day after we publish podcast episodes at 1 p.m. on YouTube. We'll see you in there. May the Force be with you guys, and we'll see you next week on Star Wars Escape Pod with so much more coming at you in light speed.